be glad to lend you, but he's all in. Down and out, when I had money, I was crazy to lend. But if I ever get my hand on a dollar again, I'm gonna hold on to it. It's your only friend when you're all in, down and out.
The story of the Pinkerton Detective Agency starts with Alan Pinkerton, an immigrant who found opportunity in the post-Second Industrial Revolution America. Loose government regulations on business and a supply of labor gave birth to the mighty titans of industry, such as Carnegie Steel or Standard Oil. Giant trusts lorded over and took advantage of their labor, setting the stage for explosive conflicts. Something the Pinkertons would profit from was strikebreaking.
Alan Pinkerton was born in 1819 in Glasgow, Scotland. He immigrated to the U.S. in 1842. After moving to the U.S., he started a small barrel-making shop outside of Chicago. Pinkerton became a detective after accidentally stumbling upon counterfeiters. He was the city's first detective. He formed the Pinkerton Detective Agency in 1850. He felt that the normal police needed to be augmented with his new detectives. During the Civil War, the Pinkertons acted as Union spies. Over the course of the war, they uncovered a plot to assassinate President Lincoln. This brought them to the national light as trusted spies for the Union.
After the Civil War, the Pinkerton Detective Agency capitalized on the rise of big business, brought on by the Second Industrial Revolution. Under the lead of Robert Pinkerton, Alan's son, the Pinkerton Protective Patrol entered the business of strikebreaking. The Pinkertons acted as enforcers of management for railroads, mines, and other industries plagued by dangerous conditions and low pay. The need for private security like the Pinkertons highlights the total dominance of management in labor relations, foreshadowing a need for reform.
The Pinkerton Protective Patrol became prominent allies of business. This 1893 contemporary history of the Pinkertons describes the Pinkerton involvement in mining and railroad strikes. The aggressive methods of the Pinkerton strikebreakers is said to have led to immense animosity among labor. The fact that a contemporary history comments on the power of big business-backed enforcers highlights the public is becoming aware at an imbalance in labor relations. The same history book describes how the Pinkertons at the New York Central Railroad strike used rifle fire to intimidate and even kill strikers. This shows the remorseless attitude of big business enforcers during strikes and how change was coming in response, as shown by an anti-Pinkerton bill.
Public outrage against strikebreaking culminated at the Homestead Strike in Pennsylvania in 1892. Workers were protesting a wage cut and cut off access to the steel plant owned by Carnegie Steel. This led boss Henry Frick to send a letter to Carnegie assessing the situation. Frick says that the plant has a deal with the sheriff, highlighting the deep influence of big business that often superseded law, represented by the sheriff, with their financial might.
The content of the letter displays how the Pinkertons were willing to work in secret against strikers because they may have been fearful of being criticized by the public. The big businesses began to use this greater amount of equipment as well as new adapted techniques because they began to realize how powerful strikers were when they worked together in such large numbers. The excerpt from this section of the letter illustrates how the public manifests itself in the form of the newspaper agencies, favoring the strikers, highlighting how the conflict spawns an us versus them mentality. Frick mocks the workers, saying that we have the audacity to guard and protect our own property, showing how he has no respect for workers. It also demonstrates how neither side will concede without outside intervention. This natural state of deadlock will eventually force regulatory reforms from the government.
On July 6th, a massive battle broke out against the strikers and the Pinkerton enforcers at the Homestead plant.
A crowd, thousands strong, armed with muskets, rocks, and pistols, whatever they could carry, broke through the fence surrounding the mill on their way to the river. At the front of the group were Hugh O'Donnell and Margaret Finch, a steelworker's widow. She carried a billy club, shouting for the chance to get at those dirty black sheep. "We'll send them home on stretchers," said one worker. "Hell will be full of new pictures in the morning."
The barges approached, and Hugh O'Donnell stood on the dock. And as one of the Pinkerton captains got out, O'Donnell said, "I speak to you as working men, I speak to you as a man. Stop now, there will be bloodshed. Don't take our jobs. Stop."
Following exchanges of gunfire, 7 strikers and 3 Pinkerton agents lie dead. The Pinkertons were forced to retreat.
But even without the Pinkertons, the strike lost cohesion on November 20th, 1892. The strike's failure showed how hard it would be to defeat big business, and it was seen as a defeat for unionism as a whole.
After the disaster of the Homestead strike, the Pinkertons decided to shift back to detective work. Although the Pinkerton Protective Patrol operated for little over a decade, it had major consequences in the world of business. Pinkerton strikebreaking damaged unions by neutralizing the attempts of workers to gain leverage. However, in the long term, public opinion sympathized with labor and ushered in the progressive era to check the excesses of big business. After Homestead, congressional investigations led to laws restricting armed mercenaries like the Pinkerton Protective Patrol. The government began using laws like the Sherman Antitrust Act for its intended purpose to curb big business. Pinkerton strike busting gave way to federal trust busting. Presidents such as Teddy Roosevelt and William Taft earned reputations as progressive trust busters and a sign of the shifting stance of the federal government. Roosevelt pioneered the idea of federal trust busting as he dissolved 44 trusts in his 2 terms, while Taft took it a step further by dissolving 90 trusts in a single term. Alan Pinkerton's own story of an immigrant rising to wealth, then working to keep fellow immigrants from achieving wealth, acts as a microcosm of the Second Industrial Revolution. The imbalance created by the total dominance of management and labor relations was supported by heavy-handed tactics like strikebreaking. However, progressive reforms were a major reaction that sought to level the playing field for labor.
The method of strikebreaking used by the Pinkertons gave way to the modern peaceful mediation between management and labor.